Hi again, Dr. Dave Webster on one of my ongoing videos. This one is on the San Bruno page, and this one is about the Sudbury media locally and what they know and what they refuse to touch, yet all the while expecting us to assume or believe that they are somehow professional, objective, unbiased reporters. This one is about the CBC. I'm not going to go into cover all the details about what they know. It's multiple other sites on the website. There's no point in repeating it. But the bottom line to understand is that the CBC locally, and in fact, as you'll see in a moment, at the national level is well aware of the issues and yet absolutely refused to touch the story. It's extraordinary, really, when you think about it, that the news media does present themselves and would like us to think that somehow that they are all about the news. The CBC is all about the news and nothing but the news, of course, and the true story. And you know, sadly, it's just really quite sad, I think. One is to feel sorry, I think, for young journalistic students and you know, what they might start out idealistically thinking that they're going to actually maybe make a difference, maybe be able to get the report in the news, and then once they work, you know, once they get a job with a news media of any sort, they realize very quickly that they're going to be controlled. An example was, in fact, from the CBC. I had a reporter call me one day, one of the many reporters I've talked to at the CBC, both locally and over the years, me trying to get the pet story forward, and she sounded like a very young, new reporter, very keen, and was very excited about what I was telling her. And so what I did was I stayed up, you know, literally till 2 o'clock in the morning. It was a busy day, and I told her I'd get her some information. She had a deadline on stories and things like that. So, you know, I said, well, look, I'll get this all together for you, and I will email it to you overnight. I mean, the moment she picked up the phone, in the morning when I called her, I knew what had happened. She talked to her editor, and it was obvious they weren't going to let her touch that. You know, at the national level, another example dealing with the CBC, for example, is that I spoke to one of the very prominent television health reporters one time, and I was actually speaking to their producer, whatever, and eventually got this person on the phone in person. So what I did was I was explaining about the breast cancer trial and what an incredible thing this was. I mean, this trial that they put 300 women through. You know, exposure to completely unnecessary doses of radiation, simply using these as pawns in their game to block PET. I mean, this was the trial again that led the Canadian Association of Nuclear Medicine to do this extraordinary thing. When has there ever been in the history of medicine in Canada where a national body of experts in science and medicine declared trials on cancer patients by a government as unethical? And they were. These patients, the machine wasn't capable of detecting it. So anyways, I explained this to the reporter, and the reporter said, well, you know, I don't think they're unethical. I wrote about those trials, Dave, and so on. So I explained in great detail about how the machine was not physically capable of actually detecting the disease. There was radiation associated with it. The women were told this as part of ethical experimental design. And worse, I said, but the worst thing was that they deliberately excluded from the trials the very patients with breast cancer, the women with breast cancer, that the rest of the world, beyond the borders of the Ministry of Health hallways, understood would have actually potentially benefited from a scan. And the response of this prominent CBC reporter was, well, Dave, they have to exclude somebody, don't they? And I mean, I was just shocked. You know, I actually gave her the Noam Chomsky Award. Noam Chomsky is the great linguist who won his Nobel Prize in Universal Grammar Theory and how humans speak and develop, you know, grammar and language. And he despises journalists for what they do with language, and he wrote an interesting book called Necessary Illusions, Thought Control in a Modern Democracy, and this was just a classic example of that. So locally, of course, for the CBC, what you need to understand is that they absolutely know everything that is on my website and that I've referred to in other videos about the extraordinary and unprecedented means by which the government has used evidence-based medicine to block patients from access to care, not just PET, but all aspects of their care are being controlled by this. I've discussed general health issues as well, general health care blocking issues by the government, and as you can see from what's appeared in the CBC, nothing from that. I initially had a meeting with Marcus Schwabe on you know, the morning talk show one time, had a very polite conversation. After that, I remember I recorded a long interview in the recording room there about all the details behind this issue, and of course none of that ever made it on air. Over the years, I have called and left messages with information. I have tried to get a hold of various people, and not once has a call ever been returned. At one point, one of the local CBC personalities came and did an interview in my office, and I again gave some detail on it. You may recall that was the interview where I had made the controversial statement there was no point in getting a PET scanner here in Sudbury because the thing would just basically sit idle, and why spend that kind of money when the reality is that given that the government had the most restricted access on the planet, the thing would basically be a good place to put a flower vase for most of the time. So anyways, and Sam Bruno actually was very upset about that statement, and I've come to realize that you know what Sam's approach was, well look, let's get the scanner here first and then we'll worry about getting the patients on it, and I think that makes sense. I absolutely strongly believe that it should be the government putting it in the PET scanner here, not us, you know, with fundraising here. But again, none of what I spoke about in the rest of that interview, none of it made it to the news whatsoever. So I'm asking people of Sudbury to do a very extraordinary thing, that is to challenge the media. I mean, I don't think anybody with beyond a high school or public school education doesn't realize that the news media really is just about controlling what they want us to hear and how they want us to hear it. I think we all understand that, but you know, it's basically the emperor has no clothes here, and we need to point that out to them and get them to finally admit the CBC locally, and maybe that'll pressure the national. Who knows? But the point is that we need to challenge them. If they really want us to believe that they are supposedly about professional, unbiased, objective reporting, then they need to use their handling of the information on PET to demonstrate to us why they are such a trusted and newsworthy source. So I'm asking people this extraordinary thing, and that is to consider boycotting the CBC local programming, and letting them know about that, and letting them know that you are not interested in listening to them until they actually fess up to what they're doing, and that is to admit that they really aren't interested in covering news except when it happens to fit their particular agenda, and whoever sets that. And interestingly, with media in general, it tends to be supporting the governments in power. This is a big theme of Noam Chomsky, and I think it's pretty clear if you've ever worked with the media, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about. So please give this serious consideration, pass this on you know, to your friends and colleagues, and let's challenge the CBC and let them know that either, you know, don't pretend to be what you're not. You're only about news when it happens to correspond with what you want us to hear, and I really resent that. And you insult Sam's memory by simply deliberately making decisions to bury the story that Sam's tried so hard to get out. So please follow me on this one. I'm hoping you will, and pass this on. And visit my website. It'll be open the end of June. The details will be there. Thanks.